So we're going to continue to hang on here. So Dr. Chanter has had a private practice in Roseville since 2004. She was co-founder of the first nonprofit outpatient program for teens and their families for substance abuse and mental health.
We're good, right?
Yeah.
She has worked with juvenile justice courts, restoration justice, advocating for treatment opposed to incarceration. She created a postdoctoral internship program for students that had a rotation in her private practice, in the homeless rehousing program, and in her late husband, John Daly's outpatient program, Recovery Happens. Dr. Chanter has a blended family with 5 children, Claire, Zach, Cole, Libby, and Dylan. And this coming up October 2nd, that marks her late husband, John Daly's day's 5th year anniversary, and he's with Christ. And Dr. Chanter is carrying on his legacy. And real quick before she starts, if I might, Angela, why should we listen to Dr. Chanter, or what is in this psychoeducation lecture series for us? Dr. Chanter, she is launching this under the direction of Dr. Gisela, is a bank of knowledge, and more important than all of the knowledge that she possesses, she has an absolute desire and a heart for wellness for others. She embraces the very challenge that each and every one of us have, and she's qualified to do the very work she's doing. So for those of you that have had the pleasure of meeting her, I don't have to say anything more in support of that, but I would encourage each and every one of you to really just put your hats on. I would encourage thinking about questions that come up from her respective talk. This is going to be the first of a dozen calls. They're going to happen once a month, and you don't have to be in the treatment center or outside. You can always access them on the cell phone or on your email. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Chanter. So here we go. Thank you, Doc.
Wonderful. Very good. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. You might want to, I'm not sure if you have to mute yours or if there's reverberation, but we'll go ahead and begin. So I want to start off and let you guys know that my intention really is for all of us to get an opportunity to take a look at identity and our identity in recovery, and how do we find ourselves? How do we come about knowing ourselves? And you know, when I think about growing up, I think about my family as being probably the very first place that I found community. My family believed in scripture. Luke was spoken over me as a child, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so a very independent spirit was built within me, one that believed that leaning into others was possibly cheating or being lazy. And although that isn't a healthy perception, that was something that became truth to me. And my teachers identified me as a strong student, and I believed it. My school claimed me as one of the leaders in my classroom, and I believed it. I went on to put myself through college and took out student loans. And so I believed that the success of my ability to pay for college, get into college, bachelor's, master's, doctorate, I believed came from hard work and a rugged, individualistic kind of position. And so my universities claimed me, I claimed that identity. And so I think as we think about coming into ourselves, I'm asking all of you to think about how it is that you have formed. Who are you? Who claimed you? Who do you claim? Right? Because part of this discovery time in your life, the courage it took you to come into detox and residential, the courage it took you to consider a new life and a new strength in your identity is a place of tremendous vulnerability and courage. And so tonight I'm hoping that you come along this with me. We begin this investigation together. So there's a story, and this is a story that not a lot of people know. It's called, I titled it, you know, because I have to make a PowerPoint because I'm trying to be fancy. Jamais perfection in the Persian rug. Jamais perfection, for those of you who speak French and I don't, means never perfect. So I want to tell you this story. I had my children's father and I had bought and sold a few homes in the Bay Area, and we finally had enough money to buy up in Placer County, which some of you are familiar, it's very expensive. And we bought our first house together and had these big, you know, really, really cathedral ceilings and the big open spaces and these niches with like, you know, like these lights. And, you know, we were not, you know, procuring art pieces. I mean, we're, you know, just got out of college or graduate school. And so he had a cousin of his who was in university and studying for art and design. And she was trying to earn some money. And she said, look, I can paint you a picture like the size, a canvas, like the size of a car. And I'll charge you $500, really just the material fee. And then, you know, when you walk into your home, you can hang this beautiful, you know, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be great. In like 30 days, I'm gonna have this, you know, this home party, welcoming my friends and, you know, having a home celebration, right? And so she said, well, there's just one catch, you know, I like to come into the home and I like to be there and kind of get a sense of like who you are. And then from there, I will create this art piece. And so, you know, you have to understand, I'm thinking like in 30 days, I'm having a dinner party. I want it hung. I don't really care too much. I just want, you know, I want it taken care of. You know, I want to get it. I'm a taskmaster. I want things done. I want to handle it. I don't really share jobs very well. I just kind of make it happen on my own. And so it was a bit of a stretch. Well, as you can imagine, as things go, she comes in, she spends a half a day in my house, different rooms, whatever. I thought it was kind of weird, but you know, she's an artist. Okay, that's fine. So she, about 2 weeks before my party, I call her up and said, hey, you know, how's it going? I'm excited about this piece. She's like, yeah, I don't have anything. I have nothing. I'm like, what do you mean you have nothing? I paid you $500. It's so much money. She's like, I don't have anything yet. So long story short, the party happens. There's a big empty niche. There's nothing there but light on a canvas wall, nothing there. And about 3 months later, she tells me it's ready. And at this point, I'm like, forget, I don't even care. All right. So I get out a razor blade and I cut it open. When it arrives, it has to come by like this big truck. And it says Jamais at the top, in backwards. And then it has a bunch of all this newspaper with all these words all over everything. And then it's like perfection, 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 perfection. Never perfect. After spending half a day in my house, she is called to write in the biggest letters, never perfect. Let me just tell you, for someone like myself, I thought it was an insult. Literally, this is about 20 years ago. And I felt hot in my face. I felt like when people walk in, the first thing that I want everyone to know is that I'm not perfect. At the time, it was so bad that I thought, you know, if I didn't pay for anything, I probably would just get rid of it, right? But I was like, oh, it's a lot of money. So I called my friend who I went to graduate school with, Dr. Hildy Augustin, and she had gone to Harvard and her undergrad, so she's really, really smart, right? And I called her because I'm like, I need help. Like, I don't know how to handle this. And she said, well, you don't have to hang it. Like, you don't like it, you don't have to hang it. And I was like, but I spent all this money on it. She's like, well, then hang it. And I was like, well, you're not really helping me. And she's like, well, look, you know, hang it up there if you like it. So I hung it, right? And every time I walked by that picture, it just pissed me off. I was like, I'm so angry. That's what she gets. She spends all this time in my house and she wants everyone to know that I'm false. I'm trying to be perfect, but I'm not. Anyway, I left it up there for about 2 years. It got on my nerves. And then interesting things started happening in life, right? My career got really big. I had 5 miscarriages in the second trimester. My marriage was falling apart. And I kept walking by that picture and it kept getting loud to me. And I thought, you know what? I love that picture. I love it. And as we entered into our divorce, I took 2 things from my house, this huge house, beautiful house that was our dream home. I took 2 things. I only cared about 2 things. I took that picture because Jamais Perfection became really permission to be broken, permission to be imperfect, permission to be in process. Although it didn't feel like that at all until I could move aside some of my pride. But part of my upbringing really had pride and individual and success all together, that it was like one way or no way. And the other thing I took was a Persian rug. And I thought, where you walk, your true walk, where you put your feet, what your behavior is, not your words, what your behavior is the art of your life, is the story of your life. And I thought I would share that with you. John Peterson doesn't even know this story. I thought I'd share this story with you. And I actually have the painting. It's in my garage. I don't have big enough walls anymore for it, but I put it in my garage. So every time I pull in, and I'll keep that painting for all of my life, I certainly hope. Because really tonight we're talking about permission. Permission for you to look at your brokenness, look at your faults, look at your strengths, looking at your gifts, and being honest. Yeah. So in recovery, I found this really cool picture here. I think that, you know, we're given that, we hear all the time, you know, we need to find our community. Our aftercare plan needs to be around community. It needs to be around people who are going to hold you accountable, who are going to share the burden, share the load with you. And sometimes we feel like because of all of our injuries, because of all of our behavior, our secrets, our lies, our deceit, our unworthiness, we feel like we are fractured and that we're not able to be welcomed into a community. And that's not true. It's only true if you continue to tell yourself that counterfeit story, that counterfeit line. It's not true. This picture here of a bunch of houses that look more similar than different, and then the one that's red, that just happens to be you, happens to be me, happens to be you know, the example, right? We're all the same. We're more similar in our brokenness than we are in any other way. Okay, important for you to hold that piece. Shame, there's lies that we tell each other, right? It's easier to be alone in my shame. I think a lot of us, when I take a look at the intakes that come in, there's a lot of people who are living in isolation. They're choosing not to have community. Some of us have had family who no longer want to be connected. You know, I don't suffer from addiction to substances. I suffer from a process addiction called workaholism. And so a lot of the people, when I got cancer, said, well, you know, you're putting so much stress on your body. You work so hard. I mean, kind of like you get what, you know, like there was some of that. And it had a lot of shame, a lot of blame. And I just want to say that there isn't a place that I believe is true where we can say you've made too many mistakes to deserve community. You've made the things that you've done are too horrific. I hope that by coming into treatment, that you're really allowing yourself to have a beginning. So some people, I've had the opportunity to run groups and to work with people's biopsychosocial, do some people's treatment plans, and in my role working with New Start Recovery Solutions. And some of the things that have been shared with me, let me see if I can try and move this over. There we go. That other people have shared with me, and I'll read it for those of you who can't read because it's kind of small in print. These are some quotes that I kept that were very powerful, that were very real for people, talking about identity and the courage that it takes in order to be in recovery and to find a strength and identity in recovery. I didn't know the new me. The new me wasn't comfortable to be for me, in my body, in my mind, and for those in my life. Another person said, I thought giving up my drug was the hardest part. And in some ways that's true, but feeling everything and living sober is a brand new, or maybe a decade ago, barely familiar relationship with my true myself. And don't get me started about others' feelings. Damn, it can be overwhelming. I now can see why I drank. My life was sick. My surroundings were sick. and what and who I allowed myself to become was sick. Everything is new, and although that may seem crazy, it is easier to stay sick than to learn everything new. That is why I have to have my community, my people I trust, to hold up the mirror of accountability. Last one was from the first client that I worked with in Concord almost 2 years ago. You can't make this shit up. You just take what comes moment by moment. And I share this with you. I love words, which is cool that that artist got it right. The whole Jamais perfection is just full of words. I love words. I love words for the ability to capture like a snapshot, like a picture of someone's experience. And I want you to know that it's a big mystery, the unfolding, the reconnection to yourself, to your identity. It is a big mystery. You can't make this shit up. Really spoke to this gentleman's belief that it was one hit after one hit after one hit, in the sense of like this continued attack that when he was becoming clearer after detox around the wreckage of his behavior and his addiction, and having to feel it moment to moment was what he was talking about. Like the gravity, the heaviness. He said it was the most difficult thing he's ever done. So when he said, you can't make this shit up, how hard it is, and the courage it took in order to handle it, he could only hold it one moment after one moment. And you hear that all the time. You hear that wisdom speaking in 12-step communities. You hear it in other communities as well, as you're learning about mindfulness and staying present and presence of mind, and how important it is for you just to stay here and to recognize that in this moment is where we have the power to review our behavior and to look at the relationship to intoxication, to look at the consequences of our behavior. We can do that sitting right here. If we become flooded, overwhelmed, unable to hold our presence of mind, we've hit our threshold. That's called flooding. We've hit our threshold. We need to just be okay with the amount of time that it takes. Permission to take the time. You guys have all given yourself permission to take this. Some of you get to stay a couple weeks, some of you get to stay 90 days, you know. Permission to do this work. Whatever amount of time you're granted here, it's just the beginning, right? We're moving into the next chapter of your life, which is permission to be connected. So let me move this over. So one of my colleagues, Dion, those of you in Sacramento, let me see if I can make this big. Those of you in Sacramento know her well. She started off with me in Concord, and one of the gifts that Dion brought is talking about the weight of reality and the grief, right? She talked about keeping it real, about what we've lost with our relationship to our addiction. And, you know, you all go to grief and loss groups, you go to trauma groups, you know, you talk about the counterfeit relationship. You thought it was true, you thought it brought relief. And you know, TJ Woodward, many of you have taken his groups offered by the counselors and staff there. He talks about our addiction as being a really brilliant strategy for suffering, for pain, for distraction, for relief. It doesn't serve us longer than a short period of time. The moment we move into the process of addiction, it no longer is serving us. And so I want to thank Dion for really showing me the importance of digging in to the grief into this sadness of being duped, of thinking that what started off as a brilliant strategy, you know, would be able to hold its time over time, and it has not. It does not. It is counterfeit. And so time, right? The loss of time, the loss of trust. Let's be honest. Many of you don't trust yourself. Let's start there. Maybe your loved ones don't trust you or your behavior. But I talk to a lot of people, and they talk about, I want to believe when I say this time. I want to believe it, because then if I believe it, then I can have conviction, right? And so the loss that substance has in your conviction of your own truth, you can get that back, right? You build it one truth at a time. Someone says to you, what did you have for dinner? For those of you in Bangor, I know your dinner. You had lemon chicken, right? If you say, yeah, we had asparagus and lasagna, it doesn't really matter, right? You know, it doesn't matter that it's lemon chicken. But if you start the practice of, I only speak the truth, out of my mouth only comes the truth, regardless of how small. That is the beginning correction, because addiction lives in lies and deception. That's where it lives. So if you can tell the truth about everything, let's just say someone says, what did you have? And you just think lemon chicken's boring. You want to sound more Italian like me. So you go for the lasagna, and then you can stop yourself, right? And say, what am I doing? It was lemon chicken. Like, I had lemon chicken. I don't know why I said lasagna. I guess I'm trying to be fancy. I don't know. Yeah, it's chicken, lemon chicken. It was great. I'm so grateful to Andrea. She's an awesome chef. Okay. It's very important that when we think about coming home, coming back to our strongest self, because we have not left ourselves, just taking a break. Truth is the road. It's the way back. And the loss of potential, okay? Because people will say, I could have been. If I would have 10 years ago, I would have been. I'm not going to say that that isn't true. If I would have started college in the 7th grade, I would have had potentially my doctoral degree before I was 30. To what end is really the question. Is it better because it's sooner? I can tell you that no one took me seriously until I had wrinkles. I would walk out into my private practice, and they would say, is Dr. Chanter in? And I would say, I'm Dr. Chanter. And they said, you're the psychologist? And until I got wrinkles, no, right? It just took its time. So I want you guys to argue if you think I'm grieving my potential, I lost all this time and I won't be able to get there. I won't be able to achieve my purpose. That, my friend, is not true. Your story, your relationship to intoxication, all of the hardship, all of the loss, all of what you learned will serve you if you can turn into it as part of your recovery. It's part of it's your walk. It's uniquely yours. And if you think that there's no merit in your recovery journey, you're wrong. Integrating where you've been is the secret weapon. Okay, it is the piece. For one, I can tell you, if you don't have struggle, people cannot feel you. They can't. If you cannot know your own frailty, people will feel your vanity, or they'll feel your pride, and they will be turned off from you. If you can lean into the humility of what was lost, if you can find the humility in being human and lean into that, I can assure you that whatever you set your mind to, whatever that is, that potential, that purpose, you'll get there, and it will be a richer experience for those who know you, without a doubt. Let's talk about a moment, or let me talk about with you, about success and failure, okay? There's a lot of talk on all kinds of platforms now because it's a very current topic, right? People talking about this. I'm going to tell you that I didn't realize how painful it was to love someone until I watched my children fail at something. For those of you who have children, for those of you who are a child, which is all of us, we can all imagine this, either our own children or our parents watching us. I want you to know that we have this belief that success is celebrated and failures, we don't really celebrate them. I really want to encourage you to look at failure as a celebration. It's an attempt that had an outcome. Success had an attempt with an outcome. They're the same. We continue to shape and learn if we can look at, we need to start trying, attempting. You guys are all here. You're all impatient. You have crossed the threshold. You are attempting. Okay. So we've got all kinds of perceived successes and failures while you're in treatment. I'm going to tell you, it's all good. I wish there were other words other than success, and I'm sure there's semantics, there's all kinds, but I want you to understand, I want us all to move into showing up, attempting, and knowing that is the celebration. We learn from success because we're going in a certain pattern. If we're going from here to here, well, right, success is going to get us there. Failure may take longer. What you learn on this side to get to here, we integrate. So it is the attempt that we need to be focusing on. As you think about leaving here, right, where you're going next, the attempt to have a recovery community, an attempt to have a recovery environment where you live that is conducive to where you want to be, attempting, showing up, right? If you get there and find out that your neighbors, you didn't know this, but your neighbors are not supportive of your recovery, their behavior is too difficult for you. It's not a failure that you chose the wrong apartment. You attempted, you pivot, you find another place. You attempt, you learn, you pivot. Okay, super important that we hold this, because as we move to suffering, for those of you who have taken philosophy classes or study that on your own, it is a question that is of all time. People talk about this and have talked about it for centuries. What is the purpose? What is the belief? I think it's very important for all of you to take some time tonight and think about, what do I believe about suffering? Okay, for me, I grew up in thinking that if I did everything right, I followed the rules, I worked hard, I wasn't lazy, I really embodied Luke's, who was a physician in the Bible, to whom much is given, much is expected, that I followed that purpose, right? I believed that suffering would be less. Now, nothing in scripture says that. I just somehow, I noodled that through incorrectly. So when I started getting hit with 5 miscarriages in the second trimester, divorce, finding the love of my life, brain cancer, becoming a widow, I started thinking, I need to rethink my understanding of suffering, because I think I've had a great life, but when I take a look at it on paper from childhood all the way up, I've had a consistent theme. My parents died early. I had a consistent theme of suffering, although my perception was I had a very successful life. So somehow it is not making sense, right? Because I wanted to avoid suffering, and yet most of my deepest knowledge, deepest wisdom came from suffering moments, okay? And so I want you to spend some time thinking about, can you welcome difficult times as part of growing your identity? Can you connect into the purpose of suffering? Can you look at your relationship to intoxication and the consequences of your use as part of a suffering that has a next chapter that's going to serve you in recovery, that your suffering while in your addiction can have a purpose that serves you and serves others, right? Part of recovery community culture talks about service over self. My late husband would tell our children, he would say, "Who are you when no one else is looking? How you behave when no one else is looking is your character." And I want you to know that in your suffering, oftentimes it is alone in your thoughts. If you can think about, even in my suffering, I understand that this too shall pass. I understand that there is a reason for this. Hold strong to your commitment to be sober. The moment passes. You restore your character, your belief that even when no one's looking, I could have used, no one would know. I'm not being tested. But you are testing yourself. You're healing yourself. You're correcting a false belief that you're unworthy. And those things are really, really foundational. Right now, it's foundational for you to trust and believe yourself. When you think about a co-created process, oftentimes we talk about this in therapy. We say that your treatment plan is co-created. It's two people coming together, right? I had to put something together on a PowerPoint and I thought, gosh, there's so many stories I want to tell you, but I really think that in the last 2 years, working with very, very brave individuals like yourself, trusting a whole system to care for you as you go through this process, I really have learned that you get this opportunity to look at the narrative, the story of your life. You as a child, as a teenager, you and your addiction. Some people started their addiction in their teen years. Current you. Well, I should say present you. Present you is you today in this moment right now. This is us present, and tomorrow you. And that you've got a beautiful story. There's suffering, there's lies, there's deception, there's injury, success, failure, right? There's achievement, curiosity, weakness. There's all kinds of things, right? Some of it you may have been born into. Ease, you may have been born into hardship. There could have been generational ease, generational hardship. But it's your story. And part of what I want you to do while you're here is look at the beautiful story that is uniquely yours. You're here. You made it. Now, what you say about yourself, this internal dialogue, you hear us talking about this, right? What are the things that you say to yourself about yourself? It's very important that you take a look at who you have been. And maybe who you've been, there's been places where you're like, oh, I like her. I like her. Oh, I don't like her. Like the narrative of your life. Okay. I want to challenge you to love your whole story. I want us to be curious about different parts of who you have been so we can grab a hold of them and we can let go of some of them that no longer serve you and grab a hold and remind ourselves about some of the strongest parts of you. I never thought that I would be able to hold my children up as my husband was dying in hospice care. I had the courage. I'm so proud of that story. I ate whole pies at one time. I'm not proud of that story. Eating whole pies in grief is not something that's good, right? It's what I did. Not sleeping, deciding to work instead of sleep because I didn't want to feel, I didn't want to dream. I don't like those parts. They're parts, right? So what you have the permission to do while you're in treatment is take a look, make a line. Start here, childhood. Take a look at teachers, mentors, people who really thought like you're really smart. Let those people come to mind. Be reminded that your fourth grade teacher thought you were awesome, or your fourth grade teacher who thought you had a learning disability. They were wrong. They were right. Who knows? Go back and take a look. You have gifts, you have talents, you have purpose. Your narrative about your story is your identity. You get to choose it. I'm not trying to say that you are going to lie and sugarcoat your history with a bunch of stuff that's not factual. But I want you to go and look and see, find the places that you survived. For those of you who have trauma history, I have trauma history. I don't know, I haven't met anybody who doesn't have some level of trauma. Take a look and see what you've survived. Celebrate that you did the best you could with what you had at the time. And I do believe that if you had other tools, other resources, you might have used them. Give yourself permission to be okay with the fact that the past is the past. You're doing the best you can now, and you're co-creating this identity, right? This truthful narrative about who you are, who you've been, who you're becoming, right? So I think to myself, I'm a Christian. I think I want to die more with my pride. I want to die in that pride. I want to die in that ego, and I want to be more servant, a servant leader, a servant participant, because part of, like I told you, part of my background was very prideful, and not in the kind that you think is ugly. It's the kind that says, I don't need any help. That was how I suffered. I don't need any help. I don't want to trust anybody's help. I need to do it on my own. If I do it on my own, I can trust that it's going to get done. And interestingly enough, that kind of mentality is very, very common amongst those who suffer with addiction. This idea that, you know, I can help you, but I'm not going to accept any help. And we need to humble ourselves and say, I'm better when I allow people to help me. It doesn't mean I'm weak. It means I'm wise. I have a great chief, Dr. Greg Giesler. Some of you have met him. Certainly the staff have. I am better at my job, trusting that I need him, that I can depend on him, that I can lean into him, right? With the staff, the counselors, the therapists, the med staff, the housekeeping, the chefs, you know, that together we lean on each other. It doesn't mean that I'm lazy or that I'm not doing my job. It means that I don't have to carry the burden alone. And for all of us going through life, we need to understand that our community may not be our family. We may have to find community outside of our family. And that's okay, as long as you find it. Because sharing the burden and being witnessed, we talk about this a lot, being witnessed by others allows you to trust that you've got someone who sees you, who believes in you, and inherently we are designed to be in community. We are not designed to be alone. Right? Be in your story. There's so much shame people have shared with me around my story has incarceration. My story has, I hurt other people. My story was I was selfish. My story was I wasn't a good mom or a good daughter or a good sister or brother or mother, or I think I said that right. I didn't invest my money wisely. I wasted what was given to me. I wrecked many cars. I broke many laws. I'm going to tell you that if you can be curious about what you were trying to avoid by hurtful behavior, and if you can look at it, I think a lot of us were afraid to feel. I think a lot of us were afraid of vulnerability. I think a lot of us were doing the best we could. Your story is powerful. Your story is your fingerprint. Your story is going to connect you to your purpose. And so when I say be in your story, you got to spend some time. And it's okay to have a busted up, broken story. I don't to be honest, I don't, if everyone's honest, I don't know anyone who doesn't, right? So at this point, I want to take you and show you my garage and show you the biggest possession, my $500 piece of artwork that guides me and reminds me, right? I don't know if you guys will be able to there she is, next to the workout equipment that never gets used. There it is, as I told you, with all of the papers and all the words and all of that. And you know, I show you that because I want you to know that we all have these cool stories, right? Where somehow we had an aha moment and we get it, you know? And there's a bunch of aha moments that you guys are allowing for by being in rehab, by trusting other people. And so I just, you know, I'm just going to tell you that as I decided to share a story that's very private, I did that because I really believe in what I'm telling you. And I haven't been in treatment where I left my whole world, but I have been in a program where people have cancer and you go and you do all these like cleanses and things. And I've had to leave my family and go with my husband and take a risk and trust. And so I have had somewhat of a similar experience. I was grossly uncomfortable. And what I found, and I think it's true for your community, is I found that the people who were there beside me were some of the biggest teachers of my life. The people who were in the same position as me. They had cancer or they had a loved one with cancer and they were just trying to find a way. And so I really encourage for you to look around to your community of the perfect placement of the people who are with you, because they offer you so much support. And you can choose to keep them in your life, right? If you decide that you want to be in the Alumni, which is what this is putting on, I really encourage you to lean into them. They are your brothers and sisters in some ways. And with that, I'm going to open it up for any questions that you might have for me or any comments. Okay, hearing no questions. Oh, maybe Laura. No? All right, well.
Each of the centers are muted. If there was a question, please just raise your hand and come forward. We would love to hear it. There we go.
Yeah. Hey, doctor, we have one question.
So now you unmute it there.
No, show. Hey, doctor, we have. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yes.
I have a question. So when you went through college and stuff, and you moved into the home where you got the painting on, to what age did you start into you were in alcohol?
Nope. My addiction is process addiction, which is workaholism. And so
Okay.
Not substance. My late husband was in recovery, John Daly. And so I joined him in abstinence, although alcohol or substances have not been a problem, but workaholic. John, I think I'm gonna have you turn.
Did you ever go and seek help for that?
You know, I have found that the help I have received has been through my faith. And so it wasn't a formal treatment program, but it was really something that is called an idol of the heart. Okay, so if you take a look at understanding what was driving my behavior, I took a look at what was which I was coveting, which for me was independence and the belief that I didn't need any help, and that I could, and it isn't sustainable working 14-hour days and that kind of thing. And so I go in and out of struggling with it. And so what I have found is I take a look at my patterns, and I take a look at my my stress level, and I have people in my life who say, you look like shit. And those are my accountability people. They say, we love you, but why are you working on weekends? And so at this, I'm old now, I'm on to myself. I think we all kind of get there where we can catch ourselves quicker. But I will tell you that my road to recovery is a lifetime. And so when I think I am so important that I have to work weekends and late at night, that, my friend, is pride. And that's what catches me every time. I will find myself feeling like, if I don't do this, this is going to happen. And then I go, oh, wait a minute. No, that's that stinking thinking. I have to be onto myself and put rules up for myself around what I will, like sort of slippery slope myself into working those hours. So
set boundaries for yourself then.
Yeah. So my formal treatment was accountability through my faith. And to be honest, my cancer, like I told you, I had a lot of people who were saying, well, you did it to yourself, that kind of thing. My cancer was actually a gift for me, because it allowed me to get more in balance. And so health was my
what age were you when you had your cancer?
42.
42, yeah. It's kind of like my grandma, she died at 42. So.
Yeah.
And so what other things have you thought that have worked for you to keep yourself balanced besides getting cancer and having to slow your life down?
Yeah, I will tell you that whenever I get depressed about being a widow, or depressed about not being able to see my stepchildren, or things that are very personal and very upsetting, I serve others. And I get out of, in the field of psychology, there's a big focus on me, and my feelings, and actually that's a big pit for me. And I feel like what recovery does very well is, in its foundation, is, yes, you need to know thyself, heal thyself, and serve others is a huge thing that can pull you, certainly you could go really far and never focus on yourself. But I find that, all my children are involved in National Charity League or Boys Team Charity, so that they have part of their upbringing as serving communities. And so I, as a practice, every month we're doing that. But even little things like just this, right? I have a lot going on, and John Peterson said, hey, I want you to be the first person to do this talk, right? And I'm like, I ain't got no time for this. What are you talking about? I'm busy, right? And so then I thought, no, I'm being called service over self, right? So these sorts of things, and also what I talked about earlier about just showing up. Yep. If I can just show up and serve other people, I don't have to have it perfect, right? You saw as the beginning, we couldn't even get this thing all synced up with Zoom and everything. I have to just I've let go of those sorts of things. But the short answer is service in times, and it gives me, it grounds me back to appreciation for what I do have.
Yeah, because I have 5 kids, and 6 kids, and my mom always taught me to give back. So every day that I wake up, whether it be a homeless person I give back to, or, you know, jumping somebody's car because they don't. So that stuff's all like helped work for me in my sobriety, but it hasn't kept me from falling off the wagon yet.
Mhm. Yeah, and I can tell you that for if I take a look at all of my relapses into sort of a workaholic spin, just like if you take a look at your relapse history, there is wisdom to be found in knowing yourself and really understanding what got activated for you. Some people are using the word, what got triggered for you, what were your cravings, what were you seeking, right, to find. If you can look at it and be very curious, it is a gift in being able to use it that way. I think we've got a question from Bangor.
Concord first.
Oh, Concord first. I'm
And
so
then
sorry.
Bangor next.
Okay, thanks. From Concord.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Good questions.
There he is. Is that you?
Hey, Jay.
There he is. He's on mute. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Would you mind showing us your picture again?
Of course, I'll take you out.
I love that picture.
No, I'm so glad you do. I hated it. I told you at first. Okay. And tell me, you guys have to guide me in because I have the camera backwards. Can you guys all see it?
Yes.
Okay, I can come up really close so you can see where it says, can you see all of the, there's newspaper with 1 million words everywhere. And on one of the newspapers, it says, driving through the madness doesn't have to make you crazy.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I love that.
And, right, and this one says house in search of a home, right? So she chose a bunch of very, very, you know, like stuff with word puzzles, right? She's brilliant, actually. She's actually made herself quite a name, but this was before she was famous as a student. So I hope you can see all of that. But like I told you, it was so offensive to my soul because I didn't realize how connected I was to my image of success. And it was a gross, ugly experience for me to be honest about. And I thought, you know what, you guys are being vulnerable and going through exposing everything in order to, you know, get to your truth. I thought, you know what, let me do the same. Let me honor you with that same level of courage. Do we have another question? From Bangor? Okay.
Hello, my name is Rocky.
Rocky.
Hello, I have a question. You're talking about trust. What would be the first step for me to learn how to trust other people?
Yeah.
Or to even risk of opening up?
Yeah. I can do my best. I can tell you that without knowing you, Rocky, I'm sure there are really good reasons why you haven't been able to trust people. And I want to give you the respect that comes with that position first and foremost. And there's a certain wisdom that we all have. If we have reservation, you know, like a distance, there's a good reason. And so if you can allow yourself to take a look at how not trusting people served you, protected you, was right for you, and really honor that, and then take a look at why people can trust you. And if you think about like, well, why would John Peterson trust me? He would trust me because my actions and my words line up. He can trust me because when he asks for something of me and I say yes, I follow through. He can trust me because when I look at him, he knows I'm for him. And that's a feeling. And so what I can encourage you to do is think about why people would trust you and be that person, and look for people who are behaving in the ways that you want people to trust to believe they can trust you, because everyone's so unique around trust. I think you have the answers within you about that.
I kind of like what you said about you attempt, you learn, you pivot. I think that's what I've been doing for a long time when I kind of let people into my circle,
Mhm.
I've been down from that. And I think that is kind of out of my character to become a little callous and have this wall and not wanting to share myself as much with people. And it makes me miserable, So I was wondering if you can refer me to any literature that would help me with being able to trust these people.
Of course I can. Let me give it some thought, and I'm going to send it over to Melanie. But I can tell you that trust, sit back down. We're not done. I like that you trust me. You're like, okay, maybe she's got something else to, okay, good. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I can tell you that trust is a process, and that people trusting comes from watching their behavior. And I think that the first thing I'll tell you is you probably scan your environment really well. And I think that, believe people by their behavior. And so when you find somebody whose behavior feels safe and good and right, allow yourself to say, okay, well, they're meeting standard for some of the basic tenets that I need before I could kind of enter into something like that. And also know that there's, and I'll send this to Melanie, and Melanie, you can share this with your campus, and anybody else who's got any interest, I'm happy to share. But if you think about yourself in the center of a circle, okay, and you think about the people who you trust the most as being little dots close to that circle. And then if you think about planes or planets that orbit, if you take a plane like out and go one circle out, and then one circle out, and then one circle out, right? If I'm just meeting you for the first time, then I might be on the outside circle, but I am a professional. So maybe I'm not going to be like total stranger danger. Maybe because of my education and what I've talked about, maybe you'd move me in, right? So it's important.
Let me ask you this question though first.
Pardon?
Since I'm trying to get to trust you and trust in what you're sharing with me, let me ask you, who are you when no one's looking? Give me 3 words that describe you.
3 words that describe me when no one's
looking. Who are you when no one's looking? Because I want to be able to trust what you're telling me.
Yeah.
So
I would say this. I am in process. That's actually 2 words, but it's really one concept, right?
I'll give you that one. It's good.
Yeah. I'm in process. I'm joyful. And I know that I'm joyful because I've had a ton of sorrow, but every day I wake up and my day starts with joy.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I am hopeful because I know no matter what happens, I know no one can shake it from me. I know my purpose. So, yeah, those are my 3.
We share the same similarities. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Any other questions from any other locations? No. Okay. Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think we're good. So I can tell you if any question comes up, you can, whoever is working there, you can hand them the question and they can send me an email and I can definitely get it back to you. What an honor it has been to share some time with you, some of my stories, some of my beliefs. I just will tell you that I likely will not get a chance to work with all of you or meet all of you, but this opportunity that we have shared tonight, I hope that there's something that you can take with you. That would be my purpose for tonight. And, what a beautiful role model you are to those in your circles of influence about taking a risk for yourself and for the health of who you are. And so I celebrate you and I wish you all the best in your recovery journey. And thank you for trusting our company with your recovery process. Take care, everyone. Good night.